Welcome. This webinar will provide an overview of the 2025 ACLS HBCU Faculty Fellowships and Grants Competitions. I'll start with a brief overview of ACLS, who we are, and the ways in which we support scholarship across the humanities and interpretive social sciences. Then, I'll discuss the application components and our peer review process for the ACLS HBCU competitions. First, an introduction to the American Council of Learner Societies. ACLS is a private, nonprofit federation of 81 learner societies in the humanities and interpretive social sciences, including both larger disciplinary associations as well as subdisciplinary and interdisciplinary associations that support tens of thousands of scholars working across all fields of humanistic inquiry. ACLS is over 100 years old, and in that time, the Council has launched initiatives that advance research and field building, as well as offer direct support for scholars, public engagement, and systems change in higher education. This diverse and evolving portfolio of work follows ACLS's twofold mission: the advancement of humanistic studies in all fields of learning, and the maintenance and strengthening of relations among the national societies devoted to those studies. In the 2024-2025 competition year, ACLS offered a number of distinct fellowship and grant opportunities that supported scholars working in various fields of the humanities and interpretive social sciences, from advanced grad students to early career PhDs to senior scholars. Across all our various programs, in the 24-25 competition cycle, ACLS provided more than $25 million in support to over 440 awardees selected from over 3,000 applications. Our fellowship and grant making is made possible through the contributions of our peer reviewers. We drew on the expertise of over 600 scholars working across the entire landscape of higher education and beyond in the selection of our fellows and grantees. Let's now zoom in on the ACLS HBCU Faculty Fellowships and Grants Program. I'd like to briefly offer some context on the program's origins. This program is a 3-year pilot funded by the ACLS Endowment. It was created in consultation with HBCU administrators and faculty. ACLS held 7 focus groups with over 35 HBCU faculty members from public and private institutions, large and small schools, and in fields ranging from history to education and philosophy, among others. We were interested in understanding 2 things. First, the teaching, learning, and research context of these institutions, because we know HBCUs are not a monolith. And second, what types of fellowship and grant support would be the most helpful. Our goal was to listen, learn, and be responsive, and we tried our best to include as many of the suggestions we received into this offering. Let's now turn to the specifics of this program. Based on what we learned from the focus groups, we landed on a program with 2 separate competitions, one for fellowships and the other for grants. In the 2025 competition year, ACLS is offering up to 8 HBCU faculty fellowships of up to $50,000 and up to 12 HBCU faculty grants of up to $10,000. If you're awarded a grant, the work must be completed in 12 to 15 months, and if you're awarded a fellowship, the work must be completed in 15 to 27 months. One thing to note is that if you apply for a fellowship and you propose to complete your project in 15 months, for example, that will be as competitive as someone aiming to complete their work in 27 months. In other words, you should propose a project timeline that makes sense for your project and that will allow you to accomplish the work you seek to do. If you're considering whether to apply for a fellowship or a grant, we encourage you to think about the scope and stage of your project. If your project is smaller in scale, or perhaps at an earlier stage of development, you might consider applying for a grant. However, if you have a larger project that requires more of your time, or a project that is further along in development, then you might consider applying for a fellowship. Please note that grants require no time off, but our fellowships require the equivalent of 4 course releases. This time can be taken during the academic year in the form of course releases spread out, or during the summer instead of summer salary, or even to supplement a sabbatical. We're quite flexible on how this time can be distributed, and we encourage you to contact us at fellowships@acls.org with questions about your specific situation. Regardless of whether you apply for a grant or fellowship, both offer flexible support, meaning that they cover a range of expenses. For example, if you want funds to travel to an archive and write a monograph, we can support that. Or if you want funds to pay an honorarium to a collaborator or funds to train research assistants, we can support that as well. You're also able to have childcare or elder care as part of your budgets, or perhaps you need event space and food for a community partnership event. These are just a few examples, but the key takeaway is that our goal is to help you move your work forward, and we recognize that the needs of each faculty member and project will vary. Both the fellowships and grants are non-residential, so you are able to do your work from anywhere in the world that makes sense to you. And both support flexible products, meaning that we view scholarship broadly. So whether you plan to produce a book or scholarly article, open educational resources with meaningful connections to your research, or a community engaged project grounded in scholarly research but geared towards a public audience, these are just a few examples. There are only two caveats to keep in mind. First, any resource produced about teaching and learning must be focused on a post-secondary context, and K-12 resources are not eligible projects. Second, in keeping with ACLS's mission, all projects must engage substantially with research in the humanities or interpretive social sciences. Please note that applicants are able to submit applications for both the fellowship and grant competitions in the same year. However, these applications must be for separate projects. If an applicant is awarded both a fellowship and a grant in the same year, they may only accept one. Now let's turn to our eligibility criteria. First, we require that applicants hold an MA or PhD in a humanistic or social science field. However, we can be somewhat flexible on this. For example, if you have a PhD in organizational management, but have been teaching rhetoric and communication courses for the past 4 years, then you could be eligible. We encourage you to email us at fellowships@acls.org with any eligibility questions about your specific context. Our FAQ also has more information on this topic. Second, to be eligible, you must be primarily employed at an HBCU, but you may be tenured or on the tenure track or a contingent faculty member. We do require that you remain primarily employed at an HBCU for the duration of your fellowship or grant term. Finally, you must agree to take part in occasional networking, project development, and mentorship events during the course of the award term. Our goal was to make this application process worthwhile for you and for your institutions. We know that writing a fellowship application takes time, and this is time away from teaching, from service, scholarship, and all other aspects of your life. Therefore, if you're awarded a fellowship or a grant, your institution will also receive a $2,500 grant. Your administration may use these funds to support humanities programming or infrastructure at your institution. In addition, if you make it to the finalist round but are not awarded a fellowship, you will receive a $500 micro-research grant to use in whatever way will advance your research project. Finalists will also be invited to participate in virtual project development workshops. The deadline for both the fellowship and grant competitions is November 5th, 2025 by 9 p.m. Eastern. The application portal can be accessed at ofa.acls.org. We will now take a brief look at the program's application and the peer review process. Let's now discuss the application components for the ACLS HBCU Faculty Fellowships and Grants competition. We want to see you as whole scholars who have teaching, service, and research commitments, and our goal in the application is to provide opportunities for you to represent your obligations and interests holistically. To that end, the application features questions about your service and teaching obligations, alongside questions about your research, so that we may better understand your research aims in context. The fellowship application is slightly longer than the grant application, but both require an application form, which you fill online, a short research proposal in which you'll discuss your project and its broader humanistic significance, a personal statement describing your intellectual journey as a scholar, a work plan in which you operationalize your ideas and tell us what work you intend to do and when, and finally a budget, which details all your project expenses. You can find templates for the work plan and budget on the ACLS website on our competition pages. Please note that this program does not require reference letters, nor do we require institutional statements upon applying. However, if you do receive an award, we will require a brief form signed by an administrator at your institution that confirms you are able and eligible to accept the fellowship or grant. Please refer to the individual competition pages for detailed instructions on application components and formatting guidelines. When putting together a proposal, it is important to think about your audience. Your ideas matter. How you present them matters too. We encourage applicants to bear in mind ACLS's peer review process when putting together their applications, and to consider how you can best articulate the problems you are tackling, your research questions, the stakes of your research, and your plans for research writing and dissemination. The ACLS HBCU Faculty Fellowships and Grants Program employs a multi-stage review process. First, after you submit an application, ACLS program staff will review your application to ensure that it is complete, eligible according to the year's guidelines, and also meets the formatting requirements spelled out in our call for applications. Please pay close attention to these formatting requirements. If you have exceeded page limits or ignored any formatting guidelines in a significant way, your application may be deemed ineligible and held back from peer review. Once this initial screening is done, your application is typically read by 3 peer reviewers in a first round of review. Typically, these reviewers are within your field, and many will be specialists in the particular methods, time period, and geography that your work explores. ACLS assigns reviewers to your application based on the information that you provide us in your proposal, the fields of study you're working in, the methods you employ in your research, and your bibliography. After this first round has been completed, based on the results of the first round of review, a set of the best reviewed applications advances to a second and final round of review. As opposed to the first round, the finalist applications are read and evaluated by one of the program's multidisciplinary selection committees. A committee might include a sociologist, a musicologist, a historian, a philosopher, and this group will read a diverse set of applications before coming together in a day-long meeting to select a set of awardees. If your application advances to this round of review, it will be assigned to one of these panels, typically one where at least one of the committee members has disciplinary expertise that overlaps with your own. So if your application is, for example, in philosophy, there would be a philosopher on the selection committee reading your proposal. However, there might also be a scholar of linguistics, art history, modern languages, political science. This means that your charge as an applicant is to consider how you can convey the stakes of your research to this interdisciplinary audience. For one, it is important that you avoid jargon, which some of your readers may not be familiar. But in general, you should consider how you can most clearly articulate the problems you're investigating, the theories and methodologies you draw on, and the preliminary findings of your work. Think about how you will bring the project to fruition and what impact you expect this work to have within and beyond your field. Let's now delve into our application components. We break down these components into 3 sections. First, an online form that collects contact, education, and career context information. Second, a section that you must type or paste text into an online form that briefly summarizes your research project and explains the significance of the work to an interdisciplinary audience of readers. Finally, there are materials that you will upload to the application portal, including a proposal, bibliography, work plan, budget, and a personal statement. It is important to make a checklist of these items, whether they must be entered directly into the online form or uploaded later, because they are all important to our process. None of them should be left to the very last minute. An important thing to bear in mind is that the order in which you encounter questions in our application portal is not necessarily the same order that reviewers will see these components. For instance, although you enter your contact information, education, and career contacts into the application portal first, we want reviewers to pay attention first and foremost to the project you're proposing. So the first items the reviewers do see are your project title, the abstract, and the second abstract that we call the broad humanistic significance statement. Given their priority in the application, we urge you to not leave these to the last minute. Log into our portal, read the prompts for these items, and make sure that you give yourself enough time to complete them. You should not, for example, simply cut and paste the first paragraph of your proposal document into the abstract field. The first component we'll take a look at is the abstract. The abstract is a concise summary of your project where you get to tell reviewers what you're attempting to accomplish with your research. It is also an opportunity to briefly explain the broader stakes of your work. We understand that research abstracts are a genre unto themselves, and there truly is no one way to write them. If you need inspiration, we encourage you to look at the hundreds of examples of abstracts from past funded projects that you can find on our recent awardee pages. You can access these profiles via our website at acls.org. The second abstract that you will write as part of your application is what we at ACLS call the broad humanistic significance statement. We ask you to complete this section for a number of reasons, but chief among them is that this gives you a second opportunity to describe your project in terms that can connect with the multidisciplinary selection committee. Now, your project does not need to be interdisciplinary to succeed in an ACLS competition. However, it does need to convey clearly the stakes of your work to someone who might not be familiar with your particular time period, geography, or methodology. In the broad humanistic significance statement, you should consider the portability of your ideas and arguments, how you can offer non-specialists in your field an understanding of the significance and the impact that your work will have. ACLS offers some resources on our website that can help you consider how to best convey the significance and stakes of your work to reviewers. We'll review those resources at the end of this presentation. Now we'll take a look at the set of application components that you as an applicant must upload through our portal. These components, the proposal narrative, brief bibliography, project work plan and budget, and the statement of intellectual trajectory or personal statement. These are all intended to give you an opportunity to articulate the intellectual basis of your research, articulate the shape of your project, and your capacity to execute this project. It is important to remember that you are proposing a project, not just a set of captivating problems, questions, or ideas. When putting together these materials, you should consider how your application demonstrates how a fellowship from ACLS and the time and resources it provides you will intervene in and advance a research project that has a beginning, middle, and end. Now we'll take a look at each of these components briefly. The proposal narrative is the central component of your application, which all other components supplement and complement. In the space allotted to you, you should convey to the reviewers what the intellectual basis of your work is, articulate the relevance of your research within your fields, and the intervention you hope to make and its potential impact. You should also discuss how you plan to complete this work and in what form. For example, if you envision writing a monograph, how might that come together? You should also consider stage. Are you proposing to complete a manuscript during the fellowship? If so, you might want to include a chapter structure in the proposal. However, if your research project is at an earlier stage, you might consider how the research you conduct will contribute to a longer-term plan for completion and explore dissemination plans for your research project moving forward. The application also asks you to submit a brief bibliography. We realize that this can only be a portion of the full bibliographic basis for your project, so we encourage applicants to select the key sources for your project, primary and secondary, and list them here. Consider whose work are you building upon? With whom are you in significant agreement or disagreement? As you put this document together, consider carefully how your bibliography will substantiate your proposed intervention to the reviewers. For the bibliography, you may use any standard citation style. The work plan is a document that explains the sequence of activities you plan to do during the fellowship term. This is an important moment of communication with the reviewers, a way to demonstrate that this research is part of a significant project, not just a series of questions, problems, or ideas. As you put together this document, make sure you're creating a plan of work that is ambitious but feasible in every respect. When reviewers are deciding among many worthy proposals, they want to know that a scholar will fully take advantage of the time and resources that the fellowship provides and will use them wisely. In your work plan, you may include any steps or activities you will undertake to advance your project. Will you be workshopping parts of your research at a conference or another scholarly meeting? Will you be working with a collaborator? Will you be accessing archival or other primary sources, conducting fieldwork or interviews? How and when will those happen in the sequence of your work plan? If you're submitting materials to an external body or publisher for review, how long might this take? These details are important and will authenticate your plan of action to the reviewers. Your budget should detail the project expenditures for your award period, such as research and writing expenses, conference costs, etc. The budget serves as a companion for your proposal and narrative work plan and helps reviewers understand the full scope of your project and its feasibility. You should include any costs associated with carrying out the work proposed in your work plan. For fellowship applicants, you must include a minimum of 4 course releases or their equivalent, such as a semester leave or 2 summer research leaves. Grant applicants are not required to include any course releases or time off in their budgets, but they may do so. Please adhere to the award stipends as you put your budget together, $30,000 to $50,000 for HBCU fellowships and up to $10,000 for HBCU grants. You are not required to use the template provided by ACLS, but you must include all the information listed on the template for each budget item. You may edit the provided template as needed to fit your project parameters. As part of the application, ACLS also asks you to submit a short personal statement that explains your intellectual trajectory as a scholar. Now, there is no one way to write the personal statement, but ideally, this statement will provide the committee with additional context about you as a scholar and how you have come to work on this particular project. You might consider what kinds of personal, scholarly, or professional commitments animate your work. And how have those factors influenced your trajectory and brought you to the research questions you are asking now? As you prepare to apply, we encourage you to take advantage of the resources ACLS makes available online. The competition pages share important eligibility and formatting guidelines, as well as links to our list of frequently asked questions. You can also review the profiles of past fellows and grantees, which include their project abstracts. Via the competition pages, you can also sign up to attend office hours with program officers taking place this summer and fall. In addition, you can submit a draft application for expert reviewer feedback. You can submit complete or incomplete drafts of proposals, work plans, or budgets via the submission portal linked on the competition page. The portal will open in late July, and you will have until August 27th to submit draft applications. Our expert peer reviewers will offer you feedback by early October. Please note that the draft feedback process is separate from our normal review process, so don't worry about submitting rough drafts. The goal is to provide you with usable feedback that you can incorporate into your final submission. Please visit the competition page for more information on the draft application review and a link to access the submission portal. I'll end with a quick summary of some tips and strategies discussed during this presentation. First, we encourage you to read through ACLS's call for applications, our competition materials, and other online resources. You should also log into our online application system, ofa.acls.org, at your earliest convenience, so you may get a sense of the questions and fields required as part of the application. It can also be helpful to create a checklist of required components. Remember that every piece of the application counts. Do not leave the abstract or the broad humanistic significance statement to the very last minute. In addition, the questions we ask about fields of inquiry, geographic areas, work history, and more, they all matter to our process. They help us assign the right reviewers and avoid potential conflicts of interest. Do remember that our application asks you to propose a project with a beginning, middle, and end, not just an interesting research question or problem. The program funds projects at all stages of development, from initial research to write-up and dissemination. Your proposal should demonstrate how a fellowship or grant will significantly advance your work and move you towards the next stage and the final completion of the project, even if that will happen sometime after the award period ends. We understand that fellowships and grants can be long-term investments, and you should convince the selection committee that you have the capacity to bring the project to fruition. Use the space of your proposal wisely. You should balance theory and evidence to substantiate your claims in a concise manner. Your job is to demonstrate the stakes of your research clearly. Clarity is important, especially given the interdisciplinary nature of our review process. You should avoid jargon as much as possible, and if you must use technical terms related to your specialization, please define them as early as possible in your proposal. We encourage you to think of how you might prepare yourself for ACLS's peer review audience. We recommend testing your draft proposal with a sample audience. Could a colleague, perhaps from another field or department, read and give feedback on the clarity of your proposal? Finally, we encourage you to apply well in advance of the deadline. As a reminder, the application deadline for the ACLS HBCU Faculty Fellowships and Grants competitions is November 5th, 2025 by 9 p.m. Eastern. Unfortunately, this deadline is not flexible. Applications are available at ofa.acls.org. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this presentation on the ACLS HBCU Faculty Fellowships and Grants program. We wish you the very best in your application. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us at fellowships@acls.org.